The JSE was weaker in the mid-morning trade. Inflation is a central theme across global markets, with soaring sentiments that the Federal Reserve will implement interest rate cuts anytime soon. For more on what's moving the markets, we now have Rand Swiss Portfolio Manager Viv Govender. Viv, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this afternoon. It's all eyes in the market are all on the national budget later on. What are markets looking out for?
Well, a couple of things. Firstly, just what is going to be done about the revenue shortfall. It's pretty obvious that we are not collecting as much money as we need to keep up with the spending that the government wants to put in place. And so there needs to be some kind of idea about how to close that gap. Either you're going to come to reduce spending, which I think is going to be very doubtful in a year, just a few months ahead of the election, which we now know is going to be the end of May, or you're going to have to increase taxes. Unfortunately, the taxes that are politically, feasible to increase, things like income tax or company tax especially, we're pretty much at the limit on those. And the one that probably would be, most, proper to increase is VAT. But unfortunately, VAT is one of the more politically sensitive topics out there. People feel that immediately in their pocket if the VAT, went up to like 20%, for instance, which is out of the range we find in much of the developed world, in places like Europe and so on. That would be quite, I think, painful for citizens and therefore might be negative for the government in the next election.
Now, inflation has ticked up to 5.6% year-on-year in January. What is the signal about us seeing the SARB start to cut rates in the second quarter?
It's still below the 6% upper limit, so it's 3 to 6% is our target range, but the target is actually the midpoint, which is 4.5%. It went to 5.3, the last number was 5.1, so it is indicating that we are ticking up. One bit of a concern here is the fact that we basically in that period, from December to January, did see a slight drop in the price of petrol, petrol and so on here. There's about a 5.5% drop in, 5.2% drop in fuel prices between December and January. But if you look at the fact that, right now, oil prices are rising, the rand remains reasonably weak, we're likely to see that disappear going forward, which would be quite negative, I think, for the inflation targeting, aspect. So, yeah, I think it's good, not good news for rate cuts. It's not good news for the economy overall as well.
Now, let's take a look into some company news. The first, Rand failed to stop the United Arab Emirates' largest bank by assets, First Abu Dhabi Bank, from applying for a trading name under the FAB banner. Help us understand what's going on there.
Yeah, they claim that FAB and FNB, is too confusing. Maybe the N and the A look too similar, or it sounds too similar, FAB, FNB. And, when you have something like that here, you do find that there is often the court would rule that's unable to too similar. But I think when you have a letter, and it's a very different letter, in place there, I don't think it's going to be, something difficult, but easy to get through, especially when you look at the fact that this is not, a trolling and exercise. It's not a case where, this is not a viable operation and they make a name up for the purpose of actually confuse clients. FAB is the acronym for the company, and it's a very large, well-established company as well. So, yeah, it kind of makes sense that FNB lost that, battle.
So, from markets, in terms of company news and FNB and FAB, grocery retailer and wholesaler Spar reports that its turnover rose by 9.3% from 20 weeks to February the 16th. What drove that performance?
Yeah, look, Spar, if you look at it over the last, say, 5 years or so, the share price is down about 45%. It's not been a great situation. The market isn't looking too positively at some of the stuff as well that's been happening with the company. They've had IT issues. They've had some of the operations internationally have come under pressure, especially in Europe, where a lot of their franchisees effectively have kind of rebelled against some of the stuff that they're doing there. And they've been trying to offload that as well. So yeah, it's the results reasonably okay, but like I said, the market didn't react to positive rate. The overall share price has been down 45% in the last 5 years. And there's a number of underlying issues, including, execution issues, things like, for instance, their digital operations, their IT operations that are, troubling for the company.
Lastly, Viv Stillwater warns shareholders that its annual profit plunged by as much as 91% last year in the current mining industry environment. Are job losses on the horizon?
Yeah, but I think one of the positive things here is that the job losses may not be entirely South Africa based. They produce platinum. It's not just gold that back in the day with Sibanye. Platinum prices have been under pressure for a while. I mean, all the platinum miners in Africa, Amplats, Implats, etc., are all discussing the possibility of job losses because of the fact that, platinum prices are so low. So Sibanye is probably going to be affected by that as well. But the platinum operations are primarily overseas, so that might help, not focus as much job losses in South Africa as it otherwise might be.
All right, Viv, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this afternoon. That's Rand Swiss Portfolio Manager Viv Govender giving us an update on the markets.